Hello, students. So today we are going to start with the some of the activities of chemical change, and then we are going to do the difference between physical change and chemical change. And if time permits, then we'll go ahead and discuss some of the question answers, or the question answers will be discussed in the next lecture. Till now, just for a quick review, we have done what are different types of changes. Then we have done basically complete physical change with some of the activities. We also did what is a chemical change. Just to recall, whenever some substances react and form a new product with the either absorption of heat energy or evolution of heat energy, it is known as chemical change. In chemical change, always a new product is formed. Now let's look at activity, that is to show a chemical reaction may result in the formation of precipitate. In the last lecture, if you remember, I had done the same thing, that is formation of precipitate. Now what do by formation of precipitate? Whenever an insoluble salt is formed during a reaction, that is called as precipitate reaction. If you remember, we have done types of reaction in 7th standard, where we did double displacement reaction, in which we had two types. One was neutralization, second was precipitation. So let's see the activity, and again I'll come to the equation, then I'll explain you what is precipitation or double displacement reaction. Now for this activity, you require two test tubes, barium chloride, water, and sodium sulfate. Now take a test tube, add a little amount of barium chloride. What is barium chloride? Barium chloride is BaCl2. Barium chloride is BaCl2. Add about 5 ml of water to it. Shake the test tube. Observe the color of barium chloride solution. When you observe, you will see that barium chloride solution is colorless. In other test tube, add a little amount of sodium sulfate and add about same 5 ml of water to it. Shake the test tube. Now observe the color of sodium sulfate. It is also colorless. That means here we have two test tube. In the first test tube, I have barium chloride with 5 ml of water. In the second test tube, I have sodium sulfate with 5 ml of water. And both the test tubes are colorless when we observe them. Now carefully mix the two solutions and shake gently. What you can do is you can put the solution of test tube B, that is which contains sodium sulfate and water, in test tube A, which contains barium chloride and water. Now what will you observe? You will observe that a white and insoluble solid, which is called as precipitate, is formed, which settles down at the bottom. Why does it settle down? Because it is insoluble in the solution. Now the reaction, if you observe at the bottom of your activity, the reaction says BaCl2 plus Na2SO4 gives you BaSO4 plus 2NaCl. Now here barium sulfate which is formed, this is the precipitate. Again I'm repeating, precipitate is an insoluble salt which is formed during a double displacement reaction. Now why I'm calling it as a double displacement reaction? Because barium comes in place of sodium and sodium comes in place of Ba. So you can clearly see here exchange of cation takes place. Therefore it is a double displacement reaction. Here barium is displacing sodium, at the same time sodium is displacing barium. Therefore you can see the product is barium sulfate plus sodium chloride. Now what is the conclusion from this part? We can clearly conclude that the white precipitate formed is of barium sulfate. Another product, sodium chloride, is also formed, which remains dissolved in the solution. We all know sodium chloride is soluble in water. The chemical reaction between barium chloride and sodium sulfate can be represented as BaCl2 plus Na2SO4 gives you BaSO4, that is barium sulfate, plus 2NaCl. If you see, we have indicated the state of the substance also. Can you see we have written aqueous after BaCl2, BaSO4 and NaCl? That means these solids did not directly react. They have to be dissolved in water to prepare the solution for reaction to take place. So I believe guys you are clear with what is double displacement reaction, what is precipitation reaction, what is precipitate. Now let's see one more activity to understand the nature of chemical change. Now here I forgot one thing, just to recollect. We can clearly see the barium sulfate or sodium chloride which is formed cannot be turned back to barium chloride and sodium sulfate because it is an irreversible reaction. If that was possible, we could have a double-headed arrow here. Please remember, guys, if you see a single arrow, that means the reaction can take place only in forward direction. If the arrow between the reactant and product is double-headed like this, you can say it's a reversible reaction. That means reactants may combine to give the product, and products may combine back to give the reactant, or react back to give the reactant. Now let's look at the other activity. To study the reaction of zinc granules with dilute hydrochloric acid to be demonstrated by teacher. This activity, once the school reopens, definitely I'm going to show you in the lab, because this is there till 10th standard. You can remember this in a very simple word equation, that is metal react with acid. Metal react with acid to give salt and water. In your 9th standard and 10th standard, I will be using the same equation. Therein, I will be asking you again these questions. So please remember, any metal plus any acid, we have three acids in our syllabus. Sulfuric acid, that is H2SO4, nitric acid, that is HNO3, and hydrochloric acid, which is HCl. And please remember, we write HCl in aqueous form because hydrogen chloride gas is obtained. That gas, when dissolved in water, produces hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid cannot be prepared directly in the laboratory. We have to prepare hydrogen chloride gas and then dissolve that gas in water, and therefore HCl is always written in the aqueous form. Now let's see the activity. To study the reaction of zinc granules with dilute hydrochloric acid, what are the requirements? A test tube, a dropper, dilute hydrochloric acid, zinc granules, and a matchbox. Now, zinc granules are the small pieces of zinc that is called a zinc granule. Now, what we have to do? Place a clean piece of zinc granule in a test tube. Take 3 or 4 pieces so that the reaction is faster. Touch the bottom of the test tube. Does it feel warm? It will not feel warm because no reaction has taken place. Now, with the help of a dropper, carefully add some dilute hydrochloric acid to the test tube. Be very careful. If I give you a chance to perform this activity, you should be careful because you are dealing with chemicals. Now observe the change taking place. What are the observation? Your first observation will be, you can see the bubbles coming out. If you bring a lighted matchstick near the mouth or test tube, that matchstick goes off with a pop-up sound. Now this is the test for hydrogen. So you can clearly see that when metals are treated with acid, they produce salt and hydrogen gas. Now this hydrogen gas evolved is tested with a burning splinter because hydrogen is a non-supporter of combustion and this gas burns with a pop-up sound. The bubbles which are formed is clearly of hydrogen. If you touch the test tube, you will see that the test tube has become hot now. The reason is the reaction is exothermic. When this reaction takes place, a lot of heat energy is given out. So you can clearly say from the reaction, zinc reacts with HCl to produce zinc chloride, which is a salt, plus hydrogen gas is given out. And this is the hydrogen gas which gave us the pop-up sound. So in the conclusion, you can write, zinc granules react with dilute hydrochloric acid to form zinc chloride and hydrogen gas. And the reaction can be represented as Zn solid plus 2HCl aqueous gives you ZnCl2 aqueous plus hydrogen. Now, we have done this in the lower class. Just to recall and recollect, a chemical reaction may result in the evolution of heat or absorption of heat. If in a chemical reaction, heat is evolved, it is called as exothermic reaction. And if in a chemical reaction, heat is absorbed, it is called as endothermic reaction. Now, there's a very interesting question given beside the textbook in the yellow box, this box. You can see, what does the upward arrow indicate in a chemical equation? Please remember, upward arrow indicates evolution of gas. Downward arrow indicates precipitation or precipitate formed. Aqueous solution involves a solid dissolved in a solution. Small s in a bracket indicates that the reactant is solid. Small g in the bracket indicates the reactant is gas. Small l in the bracket indicates that the solution is liquid. These are the representation which makes the chemical equation more meaningful, and I expect every student from my class to use the symbols while writing the chemical equation, because more information you provide, better is your answer. In case of any doubts, students, please keep on asking me questions. Now, let's see the next activity, which is to show that a chemical reaction may result in the absorption or evolution of heat. Now, activity number 15 is related to evolution of heat. Simple, take a magnesium ribbon, rub it with sandpaper, because we have learned in our lower classes that metals undergo corrosion. So, if there is corrosion, the metal will not react. So, once you rub it with sandpaper, the corroded part is removed. Now, take a burner and start burning the magnesium ribbon on it. What do you observe? The magnesium ribbon burns with a dazzling flame. In your Diwalis, if you use the cracker, you can see the sparkling flame in the crackers. That sparkling flame is of nothing but it is of magnesium. So your Diwali crackers also contain magnesium. So now when you are burning magnesium ribbon on the burner, you can see the sparkling, dazzling white flame, and a white ash is left behind after the magnesium is burnt. Now, what is the reaction taking place? Please remember, burning, oxidation, when they are the same thing. So when I say burning, that means reaction of metal with oxygen. So the reaction would be 2 Mg plus O2 gives you 2 MgO plus heat. The white ash which is formed is magnesium oxide. I'm going a little beyond the textbook. If you do not understand, please ask question. When this magnesium oxide is dissolved in water, it produces magnesium hydroxide, which is basic in nature. Therefore, we can say metallic oxides are basic in nature. You can see the reaction. MgO plus H2O will give you MgOH twice. If you take a litmus paper, that is red litmus, it turns blue, which indicates this magnesium hydroxide formed is basic in nature. Therefore, we can say this magnesium oxide is basic in nature, and magnesium oxide is a metallic oxide. Therefore, magnesium oxide is also basic in nature. If you can remember this, it's good. If you can't, still if you remember this equation, Mg plus O2 gives you 2 MgO plus heat. And remember, this white ash which is formed is of magnesium oxide. Now, we have done this activity, coal. When you are burning coal, again you can see coal is nothing but coal contains 90% carbon. Even in your lower class 6 standard or 7 standard, when we are studying about coal, we clearly said coal can be differentiated into different types on the basis of the carbon content. So coal on burning will produce carbon dioxide plus heat. Now you can see the reaction here. Coal is represented by C plus O2 gives you CO2 plus heat. Now the two reactions we discussed right now, both are exothermic, because in both the cases, if you see, I have written plus heat on the product side. Please remember how to identify. Many of the students may have question. Sir, how to identify between an exothermic reaction and endothermic reaction? If plus heat is written on the reactant side or minus heat is written on the product side, again I'm repeating to you very clear. If plus heat is written on the reactant side or minus heat is written on the product side, it is endothermic reaction. If minus heat is written on the reactant side or plus heat is written on the product side, the reaction is exothermic. Now, a chemical reaction may result in the absorption of heat. A reaction in which heat is absorbed is called as endothermic reaction. Let's look at activity number 16 to understand absorption of heat, that is endothermic reaction. Now, when you are heating a substance, that is calcium carbonate, let's do it with the help of activity. Take a test tube, solid calcium carbonate, which is green in color, and a burner. Now, why am I specifying color? Because these colors will be utilized by you to identify the compound in the laboratory. Whenever you have a lab visit, I'll be showing you the chemicals, and with the help of the color of the chemical, you have to guess which is the compound. Why I'm using the word guess here? Because color is not a confirmatory test for that compound. You may have 10 different green color compounds in the lab. You may have 10 different blue color compounds in the lab. You may have 10 different white color compounds in the lab. White color compound is just a basic hint. The color of the compound is just a basic hint for you to understand what could be the compound. You have to perform some tests to know the correct name of the compound. But it's easy to understand chemistry. You can easily perform some tests and tell me the name of the compound. That I'll be teaching in the coming subsequent year. Now let's see. Here what we have done is we have taken a test tube, added some amount of calcium carbonate in the test tube, and we will use a test tube holder to heat calcium carbonate. When you are holding the test tube on the burner, please remember the test tube should be facing opposite to your face, because if some chemical change are highly exothermic or endothermic, and which may the substance may spat out. So you should keep the test tube up in the opposite direction from your body. Second thing is hold the test tube holder from the wooden part only, because the metallic part gets heated up. Now when you heat this calcium carbonate, which is green in color, after some time you see a black color compound is formed along with the evolution of a gas which is colorless but have some pungent odor. Why I'm using the word pungent odor here, or a bad smell? It is because the gas which is involved on burning calcium carbonate is carbon dioxide. How will you understand this? You can understand this by writing the chemical equation. Calcium carbonate, that is CaCO3, on heating, on the arrow you have written heat, you can also use a triangle sign to represent heat, will give you calcium oxide plus carbon dioxide. You can indicate a up arrow here to make the substance more meaningful. To make the reaction more meaningful, what you have to do is you have to write down S here in small, so that we can come to know that calcium carbonate is solid. S here beside CaO, that means calcium oxide is also solid, and G beside carbon dioxide to indicate it's gaseous, and a up arrow to indicate the gas may escape from the reaction mixture. Again, to make it more meaningful, write down the color: calcium carbonate green in color and calcium oxide black in color. This will make the information or chemical equation more informative, and really the examiner will be impressed that the student has a depth knowledge of the subject. Now let's see some of the uses of chemical change, like burning of petrol, coal, and gas. All are chemical change. While burning these fuels, we get a lot of heat energy, and this heat is produced to do several works like producing electricity, to run an engine, to cook food. Many chemical change take place when a metal is extracted from its ore. For example, aluminium and iron are extracted from their ores by a series of chemical change. Now, chemical change are also used in purification of metals. Many useful things that you see in your daily life, like soap, detergent, polythene bags, color, ink, etc., are produced due to chemical reaction. Medicine, which are produced in the companies, are also result of many chemical reaction. Now, let us summarize our today's lecture by doing the difference between physical change and chemical change. In physical change, no new substance is formed. In chemical change, a new substance is formed. Most physical changes are reversible. Most chemical changes are irreversible. But some are reversible, like formation of ammonia, if you remember. A physical change is usually accompanied by a change in shape, size, color, or state. These are the indicators of the change. A chemical change is also usually accompanied by release or absorption of heat or light, evolution of a gas, production of sound, or change in smell, or even formation of a precipitate, which we have done in the examples or activity of chemical change. Most physical changes are temporary, whereas most chemical changes are permanent. Please remember, in physical change, if you reverse the condition, you can reverse the change. If you remember, I gave the example of ice to water and water back to ice. When you are supplying heat energy to ice, it gets converted to water, and when you are withdrawing heat energy from water, it gets converted to ice. Some examples of physical changes are dissolving salt in water, inflating a balloon, melting of wax, etc. Whereas some examples of chemical changes are rusting of iron, spoilage of food, cooking of food, burning of substances, etc. Now, in the next lecture, my dear friends, what I'm going to do is I'm going to discuss the question answers of this chapter. There is checkpoint 1, checkpoint 2, and checkpoint 3, as well as I'm going to send you these answers so that to the school app so that we can go ahead and write these things in your notebook. Again and again, I'm reminding you, students, it's my humble request. Please keep on completing your homework in your school notebook. That will help me to check your work and that will help you to prepare for the examination faster. So I hope, guys, you are enjoying the lectures. You are keeping yourself safe and helping parents. So, goodbye, guys, and thank you, and have a great day.